Travis Kelce, Jalen Hurts, and Stefon Diggs are among the biggest ADP risers in the month of August. We'll explain why on this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. You can also read her at Yahoo Fantasy. On today's show, we are taking a look at three of the biggest ADP risers in the month of August, according to Dynasty League Football. And Kate, first up, a guy that we know pretty well, Travis Kelce.
You're going to have to explain this one to me like I am 5, Marcus. Why is Travis Kelce rising in dynasty ranks, heading into an age 30? Well, he's going to turn 35 here this October. I can't figure it out. We already saw sort of like this abridged version of Travis Kelce last year, dealt with injuries. Injuries aren't going to be any easier for him to overcome at the age of 35. And guess what? This team is going for a three-peat. I cannot foresee a universe where they deploy Travis Kelce like too heavily, right? Like it felt like last year we saw load management Travis Kelce. I have to imagine we're going to see load management Travis Kelce a year older here in 2024.
I was really hoping that you'd be able to explain this one to me because I don't get it either. There was a point, Kate, earlier this offseason where Travis Kelce was being drafted as like tight end 5, tight end 6. He's all the way back up to tight end 3 over the last month. Yeah, all the way back. His ADP has gone from 57. This is just in 1 month. 57 overall to 44th overall, and he's closing the gap on Trey McBride again. It seems like dynasty managers are still all in on Travis Kelce, and they believe that not only is he going to be a productive this year, it's going to continue.
See, I think maybe this is, dynasty managers getting a little bit like greedy in 2024, but I still think we have to be like skeptical about 2024. 2024 is not a given. Let's not forget what they did this offseason. The Kansas City Chiefs, the entire narrative of their offseason was building out their wide receiver room, bring in Hollywood Brown. Of course, it's a 1-year deal. He's not fully healthy right now, but like it's not a season-ending injury. Like he's going to be back in the mix. And then you've got rookie, we've got Xavier Worthy. Like we've been talking about Xavier Worthy. I don't know how often in the past couple of weeks. Like looks like a budding superstar here in the preseason. You got Rashee Rice, who, again, by all accounts, seems like is not going to be suspended here in 2024. That might just be kicked down the road here. What does that mean for Travis Kelce?
I don't know. This one is puzzling to me. I want to also mention Rashee Rice is among the biggest dynasty risers. Now, we're not going to talk about him specifically on the show, but his ADP has gone up from 66 overall to 57. Not a huge jump, right? Like little bit more than a half a round. However, we got some news yesterday from, I believe it was the Washington Post, that said the NFL is going to let the legal process play out here with Rashee Rice before they make any kind of decision. No suspension, not placing him on the commissioner's list or anything like that. I don't remember the exact date of his first court hearing, but I believe it's in late December. I've been reading some articles about how long this is going to take. It seems like this is going to go through next summer before we get any kind of resolution. So I've got to believe that means that Rashee Rice, assuming nothing else happens, right, is going to be available for the entire 2024 season. And I don't care about his a potential suspension a year from now when it comes to valuing him in Dynasty. I think the fact that he's going to be available or should be available all 17 games should theoretically really hurt Travis Kelce's value, but it doesn't seem to be the case, Kate.
I mean, it should be, right? Like, let's look back at 2023 in the regular season. Okay. Travis Kelce was still pretty serviceable for most of the season. Started off pretty hot in terms of the touchdown production. Over weeks 2 through 11, scored all 5 of his touchdowns in the regular season. He kind of like doinked you on the head in the fantasy football playoffs. 5 catches, 28 receiving yards in week 15. 5 catches, 44 receiving yards in week 17 or 16. Week 17, 3 catches for 16 receiving yards in the regular season, despite posting one of the highest, reception percentages of his career, averaged a career low 10.6 yards per reception. 5 yards after the catch. That was his lowest mark since 2019, and the second lowest mark in terms of yards after the catch per reception in his career. Posted the third lowest yards per route run average in the regular season, a career low, the second lowest of his career in terms of passer rating when targeted.
Yep.
We did see the decline in efficiency last year. We did start to see the injuries piling up. Now, what I'm kind of envisioning, and I think they started to kind of do this last year. Like, remember how everybody kind of looked at the snap counts for Derrick Henry and Tajay Spears, and we were like, what is going on? Right? Like, the snap counts were all out of whack, but every time Derrick Henry was on the football field, it was because he was going to touch the ball. I can envision that being, the way that Travis Kelce is deployed here, but every moment
he's going to be on the field whenever it matters, right?
Yes, and he's going to be on the field when it matters, but is he going to be on the field in these situations where they can get away with this, receiving core that they've built and, they want to stretch the field, right? Like, I don't know. And every moment he's not on the field is a moment where you don't have the opportunity to score fantasy points. So even if dynasty managers are just buying into Travis Kelce's value for like this immediate payoff, I still don't know that it's going to happen. Right now, Travis Kelce is ranked at my tight end 5 in redraft leagues as it stands today.
And that's the thing for me. Like, listen, everybody knows how much I love Dalton Kincaid. Can you tell me or convince me that Travis Kelce is going to outscore Dalton Kincaid this year? Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's not that hard to envision that happening.
But it's because he's Travis Kelce, not because the pathway to targets is going to be greater. It's not because of the quarterback. Like, that's the one reason. It's just because it's Travis Kelce.
But is Travis Kelce going to outscore Dalton Kincaid over the next 7 years? Of course not, right? And that's the hard part for me. I can make a case that Dalton Kincaid's going to outscore Travis Kelce this year. I wouldn't bet on it, but I think it's going to be close. I just can't get past the age difference here, a 10-year age gap between Travis Kelce and Dalton Kincaid, or a 13-year age gap between Travis Kelce and Brock Bowers, who is being drafted as tight end 6. And even if you want to go with a little bit of an older tight end, someone like Mark Andrews, who's 28, I mean, anytime that Mark Andrews has played over the last couple of years, he's putting up stats that rival Travis Kelce, and he's 6 years younger. I don't get this one at all. I would love to have some other dynasty managers fill me in on this one, because I don't understand why the sudden change in ADP, unless it's only for the fact that we're getting closer to the season, and maybe when we get closer to the season, these older players have more value than they do in the offseason. But outside of that, I don't get it.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at. So if you are one of these dynasty managers that's feeling a little bit better about buying into Travis Kelce at an inflated price, I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you.
Let us know.
Tell me your story.
All right, let's talk about Jalen Hurts, who has seen a pretty significant rise in his ADP. We'll try to explain why next. This episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Are you tired after lunch? You're not alone. In fact, research shows that more than 70% of us hit a wall after lunch. I know that I get that feeling. I always want that afternoon nap. But let's get a 5 Hour Energy in you to help you leap over that wall instead of crashing into it. with zero sugar in a convenient portable size. It's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5-Hour Energy website has flavors galore, including watermelon, tropical burst, grape berry, and more. Go and try them all. They're absolutely fantastic. On the site, you can even have the option to build your own 12 or 24 pack. You choose the flavors and it's delivered right to your door. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, go get you some 5-Hour Energy product today. You can use our promo code LOCKEDONFB to receive 20% off your order. The offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Get daily insights to the best fantasy draft strategies so that you can win your league this season. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Kate, let's talk about another big winner in terms of ADP. It's Jalen Hurts, who has had the second biggest rise in his ADP, going up from pick 46 all the way to pick 37. Right now, Jalen Hurts is being drafted as QB3, just behind Josh Allen, which, by the way, Patrick Mahomes back up at number 1. Do you agree with his ADP rising this much?
I kind of do. And this has been like a nice offseason for Jalen Hurts, right? He's already been paid. You look at the wide receivers around him, they get paid. They're tied to the organization for a long time. Obviously question marks about like the future at the center position, etc. But like it seems like all moves are indicating that like hopefully there's a more positive vibe in the organization this year, because that was a weird story that came out in the second half of last season. But like they've made some concerted efforts to like keep the band together. And that's what I love to see for a quarterback who's been overall pretty efficient in terms of like his rapport with his receivers. Devonta Smith, AJ Brown, you've got, Dallas Goedert. This is a very talented group of receivers.
Yes.
So like Jalen Hurts, yes. Did he have a less efficient 2023 campaign? Absolutely. The turnovers were an issue, especially interceptions. Posted a career high interception rate. Like he needs to limit the turnovers, but all things considered, like, he feels really safe to me. Am I
All
crazy?
right. You're not crazy. I think from a fantasy and dynasty perspective, he is really safe, right? Because you're going to get the rushing touchdowns. You're going to have the rushing upside. He has the playmakers, like you said. So he checks a lot of boxes, Kate. At the same time, I do think there is a chance that this Philadelphia situation could be really bad this year, right? It's pretty clear that Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni don't really get along. Their personalities could not be more different, right? Jalen Hurts is kind of like quiet. He's controlled. He's measured. He's thoughtful. Nick Sirianni is none of those, I guess, right? Like I think
He is none of
he's
those
kind
things. Yes.
he's loud. He's
like,
brash, right?
yeah.
And they don't mesh well. Now they brought in Kellen Moore to run the offense, which is a completely different offense than what Ben Johnson and Shane Steichen have run. It's an offense based on timing and precision and throwing a lot of routes to the sideline. Not saying Jalen Hurts can't do that, but I do have questions about that fit in the offense. They also lost Jason Kelce, as you mentioned. It just feels like after the collapse that we saw last year, like if it happens again this year, and let's say this Eagles team like doesn't make the playoffs or they win only 9 games, I do wonder if we could see some massive change, right? This is an organization that moved on from Carson Wentz, I think a year after giving him a massive contract extension. They moved on from Doug Peterson a couple of years after winning a Super Bowl. They moved on from Andy Reid after reaching 4 NFC championship games. I'm not saying they're going to move on from Jalen Hurts, but I do wonder, like, could this thing look a lot different a year from now?
I mean, I think it could. I think the question for me is that do you really think that this organization. Now, I know like from a win-loss perspective, Nick Sirianni's record speaks for itself, right? NFC champions in 2022, 34 wins to 17 losses. Like, yes,
No.
I get it. But when I'm thinking about dudes that I want to build my organization around, the leadership qualities of Nick Sirianni feel, I mean, I guess it's kind of like you have to pick your poison. What's your leadership style? Do you want the leader of men who leads by example and is quiet and that's obviously not Nick
No.
Sirianni's style. But like, which one of those is the archetype that better embodies like stability in a franchise? I think it's Jalen Hurts' style. So I think the question really comes down to like, if this thing collapses again, which I'm more gonna like, it was just kind of in general a disaster last year, but like the defense fell apart. Like there were bigger issues than just the offense
Oh, it
and
was both
just
sides of the
Jalen
ball.
Hurts.
They were a
Like,
disaster on both sides of the ball.
yeah. And I think it's easy to get lost in like the Jalen Hurts side of things because there were these narratives about his fit with Nick Sirianni. And like that was a big narrative coming out last year. But like, again, the problems with the organization were overreaching both sides of the ball.
Yes.
So like, you cannot put that all on the offense. So like, I guess the question for me is like, do you really think that if the organization is in a position where they're choosing between Jalen Hurts and Nick
Oh, they're gonna choose
Sirianni,
Hurts. They're gonna choose Hurts. There's no doubt. But
and that's what
uh,
I think. That's what
yes,
I think matters. You choose
yes.
Hurts. Uh, you've got the financial investment. I think you have a good leader in him. There has never really been any narrative that I can remember, like dating back to his days at Alabama, where Jalen Hurts has looked like a bad leader ever. That's
He's
not
not.
something you've ever heard about
No,
him
he's
prior to
not.
now.
I do wonder though, if you look at like just the passing stats, right? Like Hurts has never had more than 23 touchdowns, right? His best passer rating season was 101. Every other year was under 90. If he has a year, let's say under 90 again this year, and the Eagles, fall flat. Again, I'm not predicting that they're moving on from him or anything, but I do wonder if we start to see like some exploring around for another option. Again, I don't think that's going to happen, but I do think it's in the realm of possibilities. The other thing that I want to mention about Hurts' ADP, which I think is fine, right? I think it's okay. Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen are basically being drafted right next to each other. Mahomes has an ADP of 28. Josh Allen's ADP is 28.6. Okay. Jalen Hurts is at 37. And then there's a big gap. CJ Stroud at 50. Lamar Jackson at 53. I just don't think Jalen Hurts should be in closer to that top tier of Mahomes and Allen than he is to the Stroud and Lamar Jackson tier below him. I think that's my issue. I personally like Lamar better than Jalen Hurts in Dynasty, so I would take Lamar over him. I don't understand that gap.
That is the gap that I truly don't understand, especially just given the stability of the organization that the Ravens have, the stability in terms of both rushing upside and passing floor for Lamar Jackson. Like, I just think in general, a safer bet. You might feel better about Jalen Hurts, the fact that, the personnel, I would argue, is better. Like the Ravens have two very talented tight ends, but like at wide receiver, you have Zay Flowers, who had a really promising rookie season, but like the depth behind Zay Flowers,
It's
nothing
not
to get
great.
excited about. No. So like,
No, Hurts has way more weapons. Like it's not even debatable.
yeah, for sure. But even, from like a touchdown perspective, you mentioned the fact, Jalen Hurts generally hasn't had one of those super explosive seasons, but he is coming off a year where he had a career high 3,858 passing yards, also posted a career high 23 touchdowns last year, again, paired with those interceptions. But like Lamar Jackson in 3 of his 6 seasons, half of his NFL career, he has not posted more than 17 touchdowns
Yeah.
passing. So like, All of this is to say that, yeah, I think the biggest problem with Jalen Hurts rising is probably the Lamar Jackson in the room, who I just think is in general a better value. But like,
I agree.
I still don't have a problem with Jalen Hurts' value rising, because
No,
I
I
do
think it's
think,
fine.
like,
Yes,
yeah,
it's fine. It's maybe a tiny bit higher than I would have, but all things considered, no, it's fine. All right, let's talk about the one that I really don't understand. The first two, okay. This last one, Stefon Diggs, seeing a major jump in his ADP. I don't get it. Kate, you're going to have to explain it to me next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime makes it so easy to get your tickets. They even have a feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff so you'd only get incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste all of this unnecessary time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks makes it so easy to find tickets for concerts, sports, comedy, and theater events near you. You can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, and their lowest price guarantee always helps, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Everydayers, on tomorrow's show, we're going to be taking a look at the biggest ADP fallers in the month of August, so make sure you tune in for that. But Kate, let's finish up here with Stefon Diggs, who has seen a massive rise in his ADP, all the way up from 67th overall to 55 overall. I don't really get this one. Please explain it to me.
you're gonna have to look elsewhere for that explanation, buddy. I don't get it. Stefon Diggs, again, not because I don't love Stefon Diggs. I absolutely love Stefon Diggs, but dude was very forcibly forced out of the Buffalo Bills offense. Like, they all but kicked his butt out of the building, ate a significant chunk of cap space just to move on from him. I think just because of the organizational fit. They trade him to the Houston Texans, and the Houston Texans literally are like, actually, we'll let you go after this year.
Yeah, let's rip up that contract. We're good. 1 year and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, they literally said, like, maybe, but I don't know after that was probably one of the weirdest things that came out about this whole situation, wasn't the fact that the Buffalo Bills decided to eat all this cap space. It was the fact that the Houston Texans literally looked at this long-term contract and they're like, how about we call it a 1-year deal instead? And then, so like, he's fitting into this offense with huge target competition between two extremely skillful wide receivers. Between Nico Collins, Tank Dell, like, they just signed Dalton Schultz to a long-term deal.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
they bring in Cade Stover. They loaded
John
up
Mechie's
this
healthy.
offense. John Mechie's healthy. Like, they loaded up this offense. So why are we suddenly prioritizing a 30, soon to be 31-year-old wide receiver who posted, one of his least efficient seasons dating back to his Minnesota days? 10.7 yards per reception. Okay. Like, got off to a red hot start to the season. Looked like he was going to be an all pro. Ended up posting, one of the lowest yards per route run averages that we've seen to this point in, the last several years for Stefon Diggs. One of the lowest passer rating when targeted in his career. Like, the efficiency metrics went down for back-to-back seasons. We've seen a tremendous decline in his play in the second half of the year. I mean, he scored one touchdown from week 10 on through the playoffs. One touchdown. One. Didn't have a single, like, it was one of the most bizarre declines I've ever seen. Weeks 1 through 6 had 100 plus receiving yards in all but one of those games. Marcus, where does Stefon Diggs go in the second half of the season? And why do we want to buy into it? Again.
Okay, one of the things that makes me really worried about Stefon Diggs is, first of all, Buffalo's offense kind of got better in the second half of last year when they phased him out of the offense. So did they just think that he's washed? Did they think that he's just not the same player? I don't know. I do think in the right role, I think he can be very successful, which I think is going to be in Houston. I think he's going to be a very good receiver in Houston. But Tank Dell looks so good in the preseason, unlimited snaps. I mean, caught a touchdown from CJ Stroud in the first week of the preseason, was returning punts, looked explosive. And if Tank Dell is healthy, he's just going to get a lot of work. And Nico Collins is the clear-cut number one in this offense. And I think they're going to want to run the ball. You look at what Bobby Sloak did last year with the Texans. They were one of the more run-heavy teams on early downs. Now, I expect that to change a little bit with Stroud in year two, with a healthy Tank Dell and with Stefon Diggs. But I do think they're going to want to stay somewhat balanced. And when I look at the receivers that are being drafted around Stefon Diggs, like T. Higgins, Deebo Samuel, going below that, Keon Coleman, Mike Evans, Rashee Rice, Jackson Smith-Njigba, like I would just rather have all of those guys. And if you're going to be going for an older receiver, right, I would rather have somebody like Cooper Kupp at wide receiver 33, who is the clear number 2 option at the very worst with the Rams. I can't get behind Stefon Diggs as a top 30 receiver in Dynasty right now when the other 2 receivers on his team are both being drafted and ranked higher.
I also think this comes down to, again, I want to revisit the contract situation. 1-year deal for Stefon Diggs, again, turning 31 this year.
Yep.
I'm genuinely curious, like just from an NFL standpoint, what will the market look like for Stefon Diggs, age 31? Again, like we can project him for a solid season here in 2024, but like, what does that market look like for Stefon Diggs? I don't know.
Your Steelers still need wide receiver help, right?
They do. And you know what? I would happily take Stefon Diggs over Van Jefferson on the outside any day. Hot take.
Can I give you my prediction?
Yes.
I think he ends up in Dallas next year.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Brandon Cooks last year of his deal. The Cowboys aren't paying any receivers outside of CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks. That's always been the dream of Trayvon Diggs and Stefon Diggs to play together on the same team. I think that'd be kind of fun.
Do the Dallas Cowboys have a quarterback in 2025, though?
Don't bring that up. That is not what we're talking about today. That's for Locked On Cowboys.
Who will throw to Stefon Diggs and CeeDee Lamb in 2025? That's next on Locked On Cowboys.
There you go. Thank you for that little tease. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen of the day. For your second listen, go check out the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Get daily insights to the best fantasy draft strategies so that you can win your league this season. You can find the link to the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast in the descriptions of this show, so you don't even need to go search for it. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Go check out our show wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. You can follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosier, and we will see you right back here tomorrow discussing the biggest ADP fallers in the month of August.